Hey, also, I will be doing a removal video for the CarPlay module that I installed in this truck. First thing I'm going to do is remove the glove box by just pulling the corners in, pulls these pieces past, and then you're going to need to take these 3 bolts out up here, these 3 black ones on this piece, in order to pop out the airbag. So I will work on doing that now. All right, so we've got the 3 8mm screws removed from that silver piece right there. So now we're gonna wanna remove the airbag, which having this type of tool will be really helpful, or just a flathead if you're really careful so you don't try to pinch this area. You're just gonna go up underneath and pry it out very slowly and carefully. So I've got the first corner started down there. Just kind of keep prying out there. You should be able to get your fingers under there to try and help pry out the top part, or you can use the tool to get the rest of it out. So now with the airbag slightly pried out of there and it's just resting right there now, you're going to want to remove these 2 7mm bolts, and that'll help you get this piece off. So for this piece, you're either going to want to carefully, try and pry right here. If you can put something soft right here, that'd be helpful, because I made a couple marks that I'm pretty sure might have already been there. There's a few others, whatever. But then you can also reach down here, and this black piece where the screw was, that's a really good pry point, because this is that black plastic all the way back. So now I should be able to pull this out top and bottom. There's another tab towards the bottom. All right, so now that we have this removed, there's tab right there, tab right there, tab right here, and then one back in this area. This is pulled out far enough to where we need it. So all we really need to get to is that bolt right there. Okay, so with that bolt removed right there, we're gonna move over to this side and work on getting this piece removed just like we did for this side. So basically for this side, what I did is I put my fingers in here and I was, kind of pushing off like that, but then I used my pry tool, this or flathead. I stuck it down in here really carefully between this piece and the top, and it kind of compressed down a little bit, but it helped pry it outward. And same case over here, we're just really going for that bolt right there. All right, so now we got both that screw and this screw removed. There's a couple down here, so you basically just want to pry this off. I should be able to just pop it off with this thing pretty easily. So there's just 4 tabs in the back holding it on. Yep, there we go. So that's that. We'll just set that off to the side. There's, hard to get an angle. There's a screw there, and then another one in the same area on the other side, right there. So you're gonna want to remove those 2. Okay, so now that we have the 2 7mm bolts top and the 2 7mm bolts bottom are removed, you can go ahead and grab, your pry tool and pry this thing back, and it should pop out pretty easily. It's just snaps holding it in, really. So now you might need to shimmy these around a little bit, pull them out a little bit further to get this piece actually out. There we go. Because yeah, it's getting stuck down there. But next, you're going to want to remove, sorry, it's kind of hard to get an angle. Remove that clip right there. Should just be a little tab. And then there should be that one right there. Once you remove those 2, you'll be able to freely pull out the AC front piece here. So the bottom cable is pretty easy to remove. It's just this bottom tab thing you push down on, and that removes it pretty easily for the AC controls in the bottom. But this top one for the traction control is a bit more difficult to get off. I just didn't want to mess with it, so I just put it up here. And then now we're going to be removing the actual screen portion here. So it's these 2 bolts here and these 2 bolts here. So now with those 4 bolts removed, you should be able to pull this out pretty easily. There's some cables in the back you're gonna have to disconnect. They're relatively easy. You've got, trying to not touch my fingers on the screen. I've got a screen protector on it, but just, you know, less fingerprints. That, you push down the tab right there to pull that out, and then this one you're gonna pull up on that gray piece right there. Okay, so in order to get this piece off, you're going to want to push down with your flathead screwdriver or something on this black piece right here, and then pull the gray piece down. And then should come all the way down there, so that now is fully released. And hard to do with one hand. You get the idea. You can pull that out now. And then this piece right here was super easy, just pushing down that tab. So those are those two cables. I'll just kind of push them away there for right now. So I already have the CarPlay module installed in this truck. That's what these extra wires are for. If you're doing the install, you obviously won't see these. And then this is the microphone cable that I ran over here. And that won't be there, obviously. So now I'm going to be taking off this piece right here, and then these two cables will be unplugged once this is removed. I believe it's just, yeah, it's just some Phillips head screws. I think there's 4 of them. Yeah, there you go. So we'll take those 4 out and then get this piece right here removed. All right, so with those 4 screws disconnected, they will jump out at you if you pull on it too hard. It's got this little connector on the bottom. That's what's really holding it in once you undo the screws. Yeah, that's where the screws go there. It's very particular on how this goes back in, so be careful of what orientation like that needs to be. So now I'm gonna remove these 2 cables, so that way this top module, the whole module thing, will be fully released. It's hard to do with one hand, but yeah, just undo those 2 tabs if you're removing the CarPlay system. All right, so for this part, you're going to need a T10 Torx right there. I got a set of them in that big old toolbox. So you're gonna undo these 4 silver T10 screws. And again, this backside is gonna look different if you have the regular Sync 2. It's not gonna have these plugins. Oh, sorry, these plugins or these antennas right here. I'll show you what the original one looks like because I'm installing that here shortly. So for the next step, you can do it either order. You got to remove those T10s and then these T20s so you can get these brackets off. You want to make sure whenever you're putting these back on is that these studs are at the top, which I guess you just referenced that bottom right corner hole right there because this one's higher up. Another way is that little notch on the screen is the bottom. So there you go. And be very careful, do not just rip this thing up because there are 2 ribbon cables in here, right there and there, that you're going to have to safely disconnect from the factory Sync 2 system. The long ribbon cable, you pull up a black tab, and then this one you pull up the orange tab. I'll show you in a second. So for the sake of using 2 hands, I already have this piece removed. All you do is this blue piece is installed here into these tabs. All you got to do is pull up, or pry up rather, on this cable, on the plastic piece right here. Doing it with a flathead screwdriver or something very carefully, obviously, so you don't damage the ribbon cable, is the easiest thing. I have somewhat long fingernails, so I was able to do it that way. And then this piece right here, you're going to want to pull out, like push out these black tabs right here and here, and then you're going to want to basically just get up underneath it to where that is over the white piece and just slide it out. There you go. All right, so for those of you removing the Sync 2 to install this CarPlay module, this is what you're going to be removing from. That orange piece goes there, and then the big ribbon cable goes here. Pretty sure it's supposed to look like, no, yeah, I guess it is like that, something like that. But this is the beefier CarPlay module, so it's got antennas, extra plugins for those cables that we're gonna have to remove next, and then just a huge board. So that will be missed for this truck, but this piece will do just fine. It'll get it back to the factory Sync 2 settings. So in preparation for reinstalling these 2 cables, you pull this black piece, it was in, you just pop it out, that little bit there. And then the orange piece here slides in like that, just below that white piece and on top of the black piece. It's hard to do with one hand, so there we go. So that's in there. And then you will now pull in with the black tabs, which, okay, so that should be in there. So that's now installed. And then this ribbon piece, a little more difficult just with one hand, because you gotta kind of hold this as a 90-degree angle, that type of deal. And then you just put the blue end inside this piece here and then clamp it down with that. So it's gonna be pretty difficult to show with one hand doing this, but there's these little tabs on both ends of the blue piece. You're gonna wanna stick the very edge of it into that part. So that way, these tabs on the sides right there and then the other side will basically end up right there between. You don't want to try and just jam the ribbon cable straight in. You're gonna have to go in down an angle. So that's what it looks like installed. I've already clipped down, or pressed down the plastic piece, so it's now locked into place. All right, so now the module screen is ready to be reinstalled. And as I mentioned before, it's very important to get these in the right orientation. So this is actually the correct orientation here, because like I said, there's this bottom tab looking thing. This is the bottom of the screen, and that is where the notch is supposed to not be. This will be up on the top side. So this one, install with the 2T20 screws there, and then screw in the 4 T10 screws on both sides there and this side, and then same thing with this bracket over here, which I'll just, there we go, yeah. It's like that. Well, I figured I might as well just completely reinstall the whole thing. So this is the bottom, because notches are up here, top side. These cables are going to be on the bottom. You're basically going to set it down like this, because these notches there are going to insert here. You're going to plug it in to that center connector, and then now screw in the 4 screws to reconnect this completely. And then next we're going to be working on those cables. So the next step for, in my case, removal, in your case, possibly installation, is you're going to undo these 4 screws for the CD DVD player right here, because that's where these guys come into play right here. One additional thing is, after you undo those 4 bolts, there is a single Phillips head screw back there that you need to remove. So with the CD drive removed, now you get into the real nuts and bolts of the operation, because there are adapters that you have to install to the CD player, and they basically plug into the factory wires here and here, and then this pigtail type of thingamajiggy goes into what you would be installing as the actual CarPlay module. So these guys here, just pop them out just so it's easy to work on. Pull that tab up and out, and this tab up and out. There is a microphone cable and USB cable. I ran the USB down here and I ran the microphone over here. It's not the best, I would say. I would answer phone calls on speakerphone, or try and get the screen back over to sync in order to have like a better quality microphone from the one up there. So up to you, take your pick, do some testing with some friends, see what it sounds like. But basically that removes the microphone right there. It's obviously plugged in still, but that's fine. Now you're gonna wanna unplug these factory harnesses here and then plug them back into the back of this. Oops, sorry. And then also, in my case, unroute the USB cable, which was extremely easy without it catching on stuff. There you go. All right, so with the factory wiring harnesses plugged in, you're gonna line up these notches on both sides into the respective holes. And then also lining it up top here would be helpful. Should be somewhere around there. Yep, all right, so that's installed partially. 4 bolts on both sides, and then the Phillips head screw right there. All right, so now that we got the CD player installed there with the screw in the back and the 4 7mm bolts up front, I've got this kind of weirdly laid in there so that way I can show you this on video. But you're gonna seat this big piece in here, and then as you pull up on the gray, it will further seat itself down and lock into place like that. And here, this cable, it's a weird connector there, but just slide that in until it clicks. Now, we will flip that over. The notches go into the holes up top. Left one's a little more difficult to get in, just because it's the size. Anyway, you get the idea. All right, so now we have the screen and module, in my case factory, in your case possibly CarPlay, installed. We got these two on that side, these two on that side. Connectors are in. Now, we'll be installing this back in. These black tabs, on both sides, you're gonna have to kind of finagle around these pieces here. And then also, we left that plugged in. If you unplugged it, then obviously plug it back in. And then you're gonna wanna plug the AC back in down here. It's pretty tight, so I'm gonna have to do that with 2 hands up underneath. And then just shimmy this thing back into place with the clips into the respective holes on both sides. And then these down here in this area. All right, so I got the AC plugged back in. That was still plugged in. I shimmied this into place. You gotta pull up on these in order to get it really in there. And then now, that's now clipped into place. We're now gonna need to bolt there, and then the 2 that were down here, right there, and then another one pretty much in the exact same spot right there. Then that will secure the centerpiece. All right, so now that we have the top screw there, and the 2 down there installed, you're gonna wanna pop this back into place, which you wanna be careful with this piece right here, because there's this black edge right here, and then there's a big little notch about that big behind this piece now. I had to kind of shimmy it back there first. But now you're basically just gonna pop that in there. That's still out right now, but then pop this piece back into place. So now it's back behind there. Looks fit and finish is good to go. Next, you're going to do this side. You're gonna put this piece back behind the airbag. Pop that into place. Top and bottom is good to go. And we'll pop that piece in there. All right, so for this piece, you have these 2 tabs right here that it's kind of difficult to get up underneath the piece it needs to be under without the center console being out. So you're gonna pop in the 2 tabs down there first. So it's gonna look like that. It's gonna be a gap, and just give it a little love tap, and there you go. All right, so that's all put back together. You're gonna wanna put these 2 screws in there and there before you get the airbag snap back in. But I got those installed already, so you're just gonna wanna put it there and ever so slightly help maneuver it in there, because you don't wanna upset it. That would not be fun. Okay, so that top part's in and the bottom part's in. So now we're gonna remove this again like we did earlier. The first step, we're gonna install these 3 8mm screws. It's like the only variation in size, which is kind of funny, but that basically helps screw that in. It's gonna be up under here in that silver plate area. I'll do that now. So one important item whenever you are sliding that in is you wanna make sure that these metal tabs slide into here. There you go. So that way you can line them up with the holes here, there, and there. You can wiggle it around all you need to get it lined up. There you go. All right, so everything is all put back together. Now for the moment of truth. Don't need to turn on fully because I'm just moving it. But there you go. Everything's coming online. Obviously the buttons work. Well, I cut my original video off because it connected to the audio, but everything works great. I can switch up all that good stuff. Everything's working flawlessly. So hopefully this helped you out. Enjoy the CarPlay if you installed it, or enjoy the factory if you returned it to stock like I did. Thanks for watching.